Salt is usually the cheapest thing in your kitchen. You can buy a whole bag for less than a cup of coffee. But somewhere in the world, someone looked at ordinary salt and thought, what if we made this harder to collect, slower to produce, and 10 times more expensive? Somehow, it worked. From pink crystals to black volcanic flakes, here's luxury salts explained in Himalayan pink salt. This is the celebrity of the salt world, the one sitting in pink grinders, fancy restaurants, and glowing lamps that somehow promise inner peace. It comes from Pakistan's Khewra salt mine, not the Himalayas themselves. The crystals formed when an ancient sea dried up hundreds of millions of years ago, and the pink color comes mostly from tiny amounts of iron. It's marketed as a healthier alternative to table salt, even though nutritionally, it's still mostly sodium chloride with very good branding. In some stores, it costs 20 or even 30 times more than ordinary salt. It's basically regular salt with an excellent marketing strategy. Every grain is a tiny piece of an ocean that disappeared long before the first dinosaur ever existed. Fleur de sel. The name itself means flower of salt, and it may be the most delicate salt in the world. In the salt marshes of Brittany on France's Atlantic coast, seawater sits in shallow ponds until a paper-thin layer of crystals forms on the surface. Workers called paludiers skim it away by hand using wooden rakes before the crystals can sink. There is no refining or washing. A harvester might collect only 2 or 3 kilograms in an entire day. Too much rain, too much wind, or a sudden change in temperature can ruin the harvest completely. This salt is so fussy about the weather, it practically needs a forecast before agreeing to exist. Sel gris. This is fleur de sel's darker and slightly moodier cousin. Instead of floating on the surface, these crystals sink to the bottom of the same clay ponds and rest directly on mineral-rich mud. That's where the famous gray color comes from. Unlike table salt, it stays damp and can hold around 13% moisture. Some people assume it's spoiled. It isn't. It's simply salt that never completely got over being part of the sea. The harvest is also much larger than fleur de sel, often dozens of kilograms a day, but it's still gathered entirely by hand. The contact with the clay gives it a more complex, mineral-forward flavor that many cooks prefer in soups and roasted dishes. It's proof that even mud can have excellent taste. Maldon sea salt. If chefs had a favorite seasoning, this would be near the top of the list. Made in the English town of Maldon, this salt is famous for its delicate pyramid-shaped flakes. Local seawater is evaporated until workers can encourage the formation of those iconic crystals before carefully harvesting them by hand. The flakes are light, airy, and shatter between your teeth in a way that almost no other salt can manage. That's the secret. People often buy Maldon less for its flavor and more for its crunch. Most salts disappear into a dish unnoticed, but this one arrives with sound effects. Hawaiian alea salt. This brick-red salt gets its color from volcanic clay rich in iron. Native Hawaiians mixed sea salt with this clay centuries ago, creating a seasoning deeply connected to local traditions. It wasn't just used in cooking. Alea salt also played a role in purification ceremonies, blessing homes, tools, canoes, and temples. It eventually became an essential ingredient in dishes like kalua pig and traditional Hawaiian jerky. This may be the only ingredient in your kitchen that can claim both culinary and spiritual experience. The volcano basically seasoned it first. Hawaiian black lava salt. At first glance, this looks less like food and more like crushed volcanic rock. The dramatic black crystals are popular because they create a beautiful contrast on seafood, pork, and eggs. The name makes people imagine molten lava, but most of the color actually comes from activated charcoal blended into sea salt. The charcoal gives it its deep black appearance and a mild smoky character, but the real appeal is visual. One of the world's most volcanic-looking salts owes its appearance to something that's basically very fancy burnt carbon. Cypress pyramid salt. These crystals are so perfectly shaped that they almost look manufactured. In the salt pans of Cyprus, seawater slowly evaporates until large, hollow pyramid crystals form naturally. The process can take up to 18 months. The crystals are harvested by hand and dissolve slowly, giving them an impressive crunch. Some of these crystals spend longer forming than certain wines spend aging, which is an extraordinary amount of patience for something that will eventually land on a grilled tomato. Japanese sea salt. Japanese salts, such as amabito no moshio, are made by adding seaweed during production, giving the final salt extra minerals and a subtle umami taste. The process is incredibly demanding. Around 10 tons of seawater may produce only about 200 kilograms of finished salt. The brine is concentrated, simmered, dried, and carefully processed by hand. The addition of seaweed gives the crystals a pale beige color and a flavor that works beautifully with fish and other delicate dishes. Imagine boiling away 10 tons of seawater just to end up with a few bags of salt. That level of commitment is almost unreasonable. Bolivian rose salt. Most people know Himalayan pink salt, but very few have heard of its Andean cousin. This rose-colored salt comes from ancient seabeds trapped beneath the mountains of Bolivia and Peru, and is often extracted by hand in remote regions. Like Himalayan salt, it gets its color from iron and other minerals, yet it never became famous. It's essentially the forgotten sibling of the pink salt family. Sometimes the difference between a global sensation and an obscure luxury product is simply marketing. Persian blue salt. This might be the most beautiful salt in the world. In the mountains of Iran, narrow blue veins run through ordinary rock salt, and miners have to remove huge amounts of regular salt just to reach them. The color isn't dye, and it isn't a mineral stain. Tiny defects inside the crystal structure bend light differently, making the salt appear blue. Nature accidentally created gemstone seasoning. Korean bamboo salt. This may be the most overachieving salt ever made. Sea salt is packed inside bamboo stalks and sealed with clay. Then it's roasted, and roasted again. This cycle happens 8 times. On the 9th roast, the temperature becomes so intense that the salt actually melts and flows out like lava. The entire process can take more than 50 days, and some of the highest grades sell for hundreds of dollars per kilogram. By the end, this salt has lived a more exciting life than most people. For something we throw onto food without thinking, luxury salt has a surprisingly dramatic life. Ancient oceans became mountains, volcanoes turned seasoning into ceremony, and one salt spends nearly 2 months being roasted inside bamboo before finally melting like lava. Turns out, even the simplest thing on your dinner table can hide stories hundreds of millions of years old.